So hello everybody and welcome to this lecture which is called Insane in the Endgame. My name is Pepe, I am a Grandmaster from Spain and I'm happy to be here with all of you. So please, if you have any questions during this lecture, please don't hesitate to ask. This way it will be more fun and more interactive. So we're supposed to show a really crazy endgame, and this is what we are doing here in one of the craziest endgames that I've ever seen in my life. The game I'm going to show you corresponds to a game that was played in the candidates tournament between Vladimir Kramnik, Russian player, ex-world champion, and Fabiano Caruana. You probably all know Fabiano Caruana. He was the last challenger of Magnus Carlsen. This was round 4 in the candidates tournament last year in 2018. After round number 3, Kramnik was leading. This was a little surprise because, as you may know, he was one of the oldest players in this tournament. And this game started quite slowly, quite calm, but then after some moves it went pretty crazy. So let's go. So Kramnik decided to go for e4, and e5 was played by Fabiano Caruana, knight f3 and knight f6. Do you know how this defense is called? Yes? Exactly, Petrov defense. It's one of the most solid defenses in chess. For example, a lot of top Chinese players are using it these days, and it's quite solid. So basically, black attacks the e4 pawn, and now white takes on e5, d6. Also knight e4 is possible, but could be a little bit tricky because now you go queen e2. What happens after, for example, knight f6? Yes? Yes? Knight c6, exactly. Discover check, and then black has to resign, right? Because you're blundering the queen. So that's why everybody plays here d6, and now knight f3 back, knight takes e4, and here there are many possibilities for white here in this position. You can play d4, you can play d3, even bishop d3 is not that stupid. Also knight c3, but in the game Kramnik went for queen e2. Knight c3 is what almost everybody's playing these days, because after knight takes c3, d takes c3, you are aiming to go bishop e3, queen d2, long castle, and then you are hoping for black to go short castle, and then both kings will be in opposite flanks, and then the game will be pretty dynamic and balanced. But instead, Kramnik went for queen e2. This is not the most aggressive line, but all right. So what do you think black played here? What are your candidates' moves in this position? You would go d5 to protect the knight. You would go f5 or bishop f5. No, none of them.
d3 after.
Exactly. So d3 is a nasty threat, right? So if you go f5 or d5 or bishop f5 after d3, black has to resign. So that's why the only move is, yes, queen e7, right? This is the only move, and good move. Here, the main line goes after d3, and then knight f6 and bishop g5 with almost equal position. But here, Kramnik tried knight c3. And okay, black took on c3, d takes c3, queen takes c2, bishop takes c2. And then probably most of you would be asking now, come on, this is gonna be a crazy endgame. This looks so equal, so boring. But then after 15 moves, you will see what happens here. So, okay, this is pretty balanced now, right? So black went knight c6. Now bishop e3 was played by Vladimir Kramnik, bishop e7, long castle, short castle, and rook h to e1. This is a pretty natural move, bringing the rook to the center, to the open file, right? Now black improved a little bit the position of this bishop with knight f6, and here white went knight d2. What do you think white is intending to do in this position? Yes?
He wants to get knight e4.
Knight e4, exactly. That comes with a tempo because you would be attacking the bishop on f6, and if you get the bishop pair, you would be much better, or at least a little bit better. The bishop pair is quite important in chess. So normally two bishops are a little bit better than a bishop and a knight. Of course, this always depends on the exact position, but normally it's like that, right? So now, how do you prevent knight e4? Okay, there are two ways, right? Or let's say three ways. So who votes for bishop f5 or rook e8? Yes? So, rook e8 or bishop f5?
Bishop F5.
Bishop f5. Okay, this is not the best move because it allows a pawn storm on the king side. Now g4 is really annoying for black because if you go back, then f4 is coming and then you have gained a lot of space. For example, after bishop f6, g6, sorry, f4, and now black would be in deep trouble. Let's say after h6, you can push f5 and then this bishop is not going to play the rest of the game. So that's why bishop f5 was not a very good move, but instead Kramnik went for rook e8, the best move in the position, stopping knight e4, and now bishop f3 was played in order to continue with this knight e4 idea. At this point, black went knight e5, attacking this bishop, but for example, if you go bishop d7, what would you play here with white? We said the idea was to go knight e4, right? So why not to go? Knight e4, let's say bishop e7, and you can even play here knight c5, attacking this bishop on d7. If black takes on c5, again, we win the bishop pair, and then we have a rook on the 7th rank. This is always a great idea on the endgames, right? Okay, so instead of bishop d7, black went knight e5, and now what do we play here with the white pieces? Would you allow black to take your bishop on f3? We said the bishop pair is really important, so we have to keep that bishop pair. So where do we move our f3 bishop? To h5, to e2? Going back doesn't seem like a good idea, right? We just went from e2 to f3, so going back to e2 doesn't sound reasonable. So h5 is not a very good square either, so where do we go? Yes?
Either E4 or D5.
Exactly. So d4, d5 looks good. This actually was Kramnik's idea, and then he thought, okay, after c6, as happened in the game, I just go to b3. He changed diagonals. Now this bishop is on b3. It's also enjoying a good diagonal. And now, of course, white's threat still knight e4, right? Okay. Bishop d5 was one of the ideas, but before that, Kramnik went bishop f4. This was another way of stopping knight f3. Why knight f3 is not possible? Because there is checkmate on e8, right? So now it's a little bit hard for black to develop the pieces, because now you can't move the bishop from c8 since b7 is hanging. So white is threatening to go knight e4, so that's why here Fabiano Caruana went king f8. Now he's saying, all right, now I protected my rook on e8, and now I'm actually threatening to take this guy on f3. So that's why now Kramnik went bishop d5. And after c6, bishop b3, the idea that we just saw. So now there are two ways of stopping knight e4. One is d5 and the other one is bishop f5. And both are very reasonable. In the game, Fabiano Caruana went for bishop f5. The other idea was d5. And then after c4, in order to open this diagonal, d takes e4, knight takes e4, knight takes, rook takes, king takes, bishop takes. Maybe white is a little bit better because of this black skin situation in the center, but nothing special. But instead, Fabiano Caruana played bishop f5, and here, what would you play with the white pieces? Would you go knight e4? Would you go bishop h6? No, right? Would you go bishop takes e5? Giving the bishop pair for nothing doesn't seem like a good idea, right? So actually, knight e4 was not a very good idea. And of course, Kramnik didn't go for that, because after bishop takes e4, rook takes e4, d5, now this bishop is basically doing nothing. It's going to be really hard for white to strike in the center with c4, and then there are even some tricks. What happens if white retreats the rook to e2? Yes? Knight d3, winning on the spot, check. And then after takes here, or takes with the rook, then rook e2. You can still play king d2, but then rook takes e2, king takes e2, and then knight takes f4, right? So that's why bishop knight e4 was not a very good idea. Of course, after d5, rook e1 would be much better. But then after knight g4, let's say bishop g3 and bishop e5, black is a little bit better because you're gonna trade the dark square's bishop, and then your knight would be much better than the bishop on b3. This bishop is actually locked out by his own pawns, right? So instead, after bishop f5, Kramnik went h3 here. And what do you think Kramnik is intending to do here in the next move? Yes? G4, exactly. If you play something passive here and natural like rook a d8, bring the rook to the center, protecting d6, now g4 would be very annoying for black. Let's say bishop g6, and now a very good move. What do we do now with the white pieces? We want to send our pawn storm on the king side. Yes? Bishop g3, a very good move. Now the threat is to go f4, attacking this knight. When this knight goes back, then f5 wins a piece. And it's extremely hard for black to defend. Let's say h6, you can go f4, this knight has to go back. You can even play f5, bishop h7, and then get this pawn. So that's why after h3, black has to be really careful. And Fabiano Caruana went g5. A good move, attacking this bishop. Now this bishop is going to have this g6 square, and then the pawn storm is not going to be that dangerous on the king's side. So g5, bishop h2, and now king g7, improving the situation of that king. And again, now if you go knight e4, which was not played in the game, black could actually takes, and d5. And again, this bishop, let's say after rook e1, b5, now you are never going to be able to play c4, and this bishop is out of the game, and actually black is better. So that's why after king g7, white went c4. A very interesting move, saying, you know what, now I want to go knight e4, and then if you take, I'm gonna have the bishop pair, and then you won't be able to play d5, and then this bishop can always come back to life after c3 and bishop c2, right? Let's say, for example, if black does something passive like rook a to d8, then knight e4, bishop takes, rook takes, and then a plan for the white player could be c3, bishop c2, improving the position of this bishop, and then you have the bishop pair, and black has nothing in return. So that's why after king c7, c4, now the game starts getting a little wild. So Fabiano Caruana decides to go for g4 here. Of course, after h takes c4, knight takes c4, it's black's idea, attacking h2 and f2. And here, white went knight e4. Now, what do we do with the black pieces? We have to take that. Bishop takes, rook takes, and bishop g5 check from Fabiano Caruana. King b1 only move, and here, what do you think? Can you take on h3? Or what do we play here with black? It seems like we have to do something. If we can't take on h3, then we're much worse, right? The thing is, if black takes on h3, you have to calculate f4 with a fork, attacking the knight and the bishop. But can we take on h3 or not? Here the position looks complicated, but you will see later. I've been analyzing this game today for 2 hours and still get nothing.
I mean, can you hold on to the pawn on g2?
So you mean g takes h3,
Yeah.
and then f4, and then you want to take this pawn on g2, right?
If you can hold on to it.
Yeah, but then I just take this guy here on e5. Sorry. Basically, I'm going to play rook g1 and collect this guy on g2, right? But very interesting. Okay. So, is it possible to take on h3 or not? This is the critical situation. So, g takes f4. Maybe now you will see a little bit clearer. Maybe you'll find a solution now for black. There is a solution for black, actually. f4 is actually a really bad move in this position. Yes?
I think F5.
f5, okay, f5, interesting. But now what happens if f5 is interesting, okay? But I think now, yeah, and after rook e2, for example, what do you want to do?
Maybe knight G4.
Yeah, knight g4 is the idea. Actually, f4 is strongly met with knight g4 straight away. So now you have to take on e8, rook takes e8, and the thing is, this bishop is hanging, but also yours. And after f takes e5, knight takes h2, g takes h3, after knight f3, these two pawns are extremely weak. And then probably you're gonna end up taking both of them. Basically, you can't take on d6 because they checkmate on e1, background problems. So that's why g takes h3 was played, and now f4 was not actually a very good move. Instead, Kramnik here complicated the game a lot. Of course, g takes h3 was possible, but then, for example, your ideas, you said f5, and then rook e2, and knight f3, takes, this bishop is under attack, and you can play knight d2, check, king a1, and knight e4, and white is going to struggle to protect this f2 pawn, and basically black's a bit better. You could also think that after g takes h3, f5, bishop takes e5 is interesting with a check, d takes e5, rook d7 check. Looks like white is pretty active in this position, but the thing is, after king f6, rook e1, e4, black is actually much better. Even though you take this pawn on h7, these two pawns are very strong, and then you have also some rook h8 ideas, also after the trade some bishop h4 ideas, and then if you manage to take this guy on f2, it will be game over for white. So that's why here at this point Kramnik decides to go for a crazy move. He goes for c5. This knight, of course, after this c5 move is not very stable on e5, as you can see here. d6 was its support, so the game continues with f5 attacking the rook, and then where would you go with the rook now? Oh, this is not, sorry, let's go, we were here, f5. You will go to e2, to e1, to a4. Actually, Kramnik was supported by almost everybody in this candidates tournament because he has been known for being a really solid player during his whole career. And in this last candidates tournament, he was playing extremely happy, extremely aggressive, trying to go for the win in every game. So do you see where to go with your rook? Yes?
I think rook b4.
Rook b4 is the best move. It's actually the only move. Because if you go back, let's say, to e2, then knight g4 is really strong. Now you're attacking the bishop on h2, rook takes, and now this bishop is under attack. If you go, let's say, bishop takes d6, after h takes g2, this pawn is almost going to promote. So that's why rook b4, that's Kramnik's idea, and then h takes g2 was played, and rook b7 check, and here, again, it's a critical moment for black. There's only one good move, and then maybe you are going to find it, and then you're going to tell me the reason why that's the only good move. Who wants to play rook e7? Who wants to play king h8? King g8 is not a legal move. King g6, king h6, king f6. There are so many possibilities, right? And just one of them is the correct one. you have to keep in mind that f4 could be a threat, right? So there is only one move that parries that threat. Yes?
King F6.
King f6, okay. And then what happens after f4?
Then you could simply just move your bishop to attack, and
You want to move the bishop where? Here?
you would move the bishop to the good diagonal,
You have only two squares, h6 or h4.
h4, and then you could get it into a better position.
Yeah, h4 is actually a good square, but the thing is now white is taking with a check that piece. D takes e5, and for example, I guess rook g1, and there's no way of stopping rook takes e2. Actually, black's a piece down, right? I got two bishops, and then two rooks. You got two rooks and only one bishop. And also after rook takes e2, there's the threat of rook f7 checkmate. So that's why king f6 is not a very good move. You see that f4 is actually winning a piece. So we're gonna do something about this. Where to move the king now? Yes?
I think king h8.
King h8, that's the best move. If you go to h6, you got the same problem. Because now after f4, what? Yeah, you take with the check. So now after king h8, after f4, after f4, what can we play with the black pieces? Knight g4. That's precisely the idea. That's why you have to go back to h8. You can't go to g6 neither, because after f4, knight g4, there's bishop f7 check, forcing this king to go to a square where we actually will take the bishop with a check. This king has to go to f6 or h6 here, and then pawn takes e5, and actually white's winning. So that's why the only available square is king h8, and this is where Fabiano Caruana went. Now f4 is not very good because of knight takes e4, knight g4, sorry, f takes, and knight h2, and this knight is coming to f3 to support g1, and black will win. So that's why after king h8, now Kramnik took on d6, c takes e6, and knight f3. And what do we do now with the white pieces? This bishop is hanging on h2. We have no squares for the bishop. Where would you go with the bishop now? Or what would you do? All right, then again, I went to a position that is not ours now. Let me just get back to the current position. Yeah. Can we do something about this knight takes h2?
Is d7 an option?
d7 is an option. Of course. I guess I can just go rook e2. d7 is an option, yeah. More options. Can we play bishop g1? Looks like the only square, right? Because if we go to g3, then g1 queen, and rook takes, knight takes, and just a rook up for black. So can we go to g1? It's not the most active square for the bishop, right? But actually we can't, because black's winning. After knight takes, g1, simple chess, and then rook e2, attacking f2. You can never take g2 yet because there is mate on the background, and then you try to give some fresh air to your king, then rook f2, and rook f1 is coming, and also f4, f3, and white has to resign. So that's why bishop g1 was not possible, but instead Kramnik found a really nice way of continuing the game. He went bishop a4, just passing from that bishop on h2, and say, okay, you can take this bishop, but now I'm going to take on c6, where I'm not only attacking your rook on e8, but also finally I'm going to manage to get this pawn from g2. And then if I manage to take this pawn on g2, I will have 5 pawns, and black will have 3 pawns. Okay, I'm a piece down, so that means I'll have 2 pawns for the piece. But then you see these 4 pawns, they're really strong. This pawn on d6, and then this pawn can also come to support this guy, right? And this pawn is extremely dangerous. That's why the position is so difficult to understand. And here again, Fabiano Caruana finds a brilliant move in time trouble. They were already in time trouble. I think Fabiano Caruana had 4 minutes at this point, and then he had to find a really difficult move. What would you play here with black? This is really tough move, yeah? So. Okay, so I'm gonna tell you, he went for rook a d8. Not even moving the rook from e8, saying, you know what, you can take it. But the thing is, if white takes this rook on e8, then rook d6 is really strong. Because now you can never take, because g1 queen, and then if you move the rook, let's say to e1, you have almost no squares for the rook. Then knight f3, then d1 is covered, c1 is covered, g1 is covered, f1 is covered, h1 is covered. Basically, white has to resign here. There's no space, there's no room for this rook. And then if you, of course, go, let's say, to e2, then g1, queen, and checkmate. So that's why after rook a d8, d7 was played. And now rook e2. Finally, white manages to take this dangerous pawn on g2, and now rook takes f2. Bishop c6 was played by Vladimir Kramnik, and here there are so many ideas for both players. As we were saying, now white has only one pawn for the piece, but this pawn is extremely dangerous, and then white has many ideas. For example, rook c7, rook c8, c4, c5, etc. Rook e1, rook e8. So that's why Fabiano Caruana decided to go back with this knight to g4, and now rook a7. Now we have 4 passed pawns, and this could also start running at some point. It's actually really well supported by this guy on c6. So knight e3 was played, and here, where do we go with the rook? Actually, we have not so many squares. We have to stay in the back rank, of course, because then rook f1 would be mate. But where do we go? To c1 to protect c2, to h1, to g1, to e1. Okay, in the game, white went rook g1. What happens? Do you think you can protect the c2 pawn? Yes?
No, knight takes c2.
Knight takes c2. That's a really good move. And after rook takes c2, rook f1 checkmate. Only move rook c1, sorry, and then rook takes c1, black wins. So that's why Kramnik went rook g1, attacking this bishop. You cannot take yet, right? Because there is mate on the background. And here actually Fabiano Caruana wanted to bring this king to help this rook. So that's why he went for h6, protecting this bishop. Now the black king is able to finally come to support the rook on d8. So rook c7 was played, and the thing is, now you can't really take this pawn on c2. Why? Rook c8 is a possibility, and also rook c8, yeah, it's a possibility, and also I guess rook takes e5 and rook c8, this just wins. So rook c7 was played, and then king g7, as we were saying. Now if you go rook c8, then king f7 would be possible. If rook takes g5, then rook f1. So that's why after rook c7, king g7, now Kramnik says, you know what, I know I cannot win with this rook c8 idea, let's try to run with the a pawn. And then here is who arrives first, the f pawn, the a pawn, the h pawn, because now of course black is going to start running as well. So king f7 was played, bishop b5 now white is protecting the c2 pawn, and king e7 by Fabiano Caruana. White went a5, and here it looks like this pawn is promoting like in 3 moves: a6, a7, rook c8, and then a8, and then how are we gonna stop that? So this is why these top players are so strong and so difficult to beat. Here, Fabiano Caruana finds a brilliant counterplay. He goes for rook f4, a really strange move, right? But he wants to go to b4. Let's say if white continues with a6, rook b4, and then if you protect this bishop with c4, bishop f6, and suddenly there is no way of protecting b2. And then if you manage to come with the rook on b2, white will have a lot of problems. There are some mate nets in that position. So that's why after rook f4, there is a prophylactic move against rook b4. C3, yeah. Really humble move, but really effective. So you just stop rook b4. And this is what we're actually Kramnik played. At this point, Caruana, in time trouble, remember, these players get increment, let's say 30 extra minutes or 1 hour extra after move 40. So normally, from move 30 to move 40, they make a lot of mistakes because you just have 1 minute, 2 minutes in the clock, and it's really tough to play. So king d6, and here Kramnik didn't find the best move. He went for rook b7, which is the most natural move, of course. Just protecting d7, protecting b5, and aiming to go a6 and a7. But rook c6 was really strong here. Because after, of course, you can never take on d7. Why you can't take on d7? Where? There's a discover check, but where? C4, all right. C4, I can just move my king, I guess. Oh, yeah. And then I have everything protected. But then after king takes e7, rook h6, check. And then when this king moves, then you'll take this bishop on g5. So that's why after rook c6, king e7 was possible. And now after a6, rook takes e7, probably Kramnik didn't calculate the whole line, and now actually white is much better after the move rook c8. So black has to keep an eye on the a6 pawn. So after rook a7, rook e8, and then you take this knight on e3, and white is much better. But Kramnik couldn't find that in time trouble, and he went for rook b7, and now rook g4 by Fabiano Caruana, offering the trade of rooks, rook e1 and f4. Now this f4, the f pawn is also starting to run, and black's threatening to go f3, f2, and then rook g1 and f1. So here, who arrives first? a6 was played by Vladimir Kramnik, and now another mistake by Fabiano Caruana. He went for h5. Okay, he's saying, with this f pawn, I'm not gonna make it because this guy on b5 is actually covering the f1 square. So I'm gonna try to go with h5, h4, h3, h2, and then rook g1 and make a queen. But actually f3 was really good. a7, this is the line. Then we'll go back to the game, of course, but let's analyze this move. f3, f3, a7, f2, rook takes e3, bishop takes e3, rook b8, apparently white's winning, but then there is this resource for black here, rook g1. And now, where would you go with your king? There is one good move, there is one bad move. King a2 or king c2. One is good, one is bad. With one move, you will have good chances to win the game. With the other one, probably you're going to lose. And imagine you have 2 minutes in the clock in this position. This is why chess is so tough.
With a2, you prevent the rook from going onto the a5.
Yes, so king a2 looks like the most natural move, right? Because there's no check. As you say, I stopped rook a1, but it's actually the bad move in the position. Why? There's this amazing trick now for black. Rook takes d7. And then you could be asking, come on, Pepe, I just promote. But given the fact that now your king is on a2, there is rook a7 check. And then I get the queen back, and this position is almost won for black, as you can say. We are balancing material, and then this pawn is almost promoting. So that's why king a2 is a really bad move. You gotta go to c2, that's the best move. And now the best that black can do is rook g2, trying to go f1 with a check, bishop f1, bishop a7, rook d8, rook g7, this line. And white is much better because you are a pawn up and then you have two connected passed pawns. Of course, it's a crazy line, almost impossible to see even for these monsters, right? So a6 was played, and now Fabiano went h5, a7, and where are you threatening now with the white pieces? What's your next move? If I play h4, yes? Rook b8 is the threat. So how do we stop rook b8? With rook a8. That's the only move available for black in this position, because now if you go rook b8, I can at least take on a7, and then if you promote, I can at least take with the bishop, and then I will have strong counterplay. So we cannot forget that actually black's a piece up, right? So if we sacrifice this bishop for these two dangerous pawns, and probably black would be more than fine. And again, here, Kramnik makes another mistake. I always say it's so easy to talk from outside, yeah? Then when we sit over there in the board with a lot of pressure, etc., we make mistakes every move, basically. So here, there's a crazy winning idea. I couldn't believe it. So when I saw it, it's not very natural. So Kramnik went b4, which looks very natural. You want to go b4, so you cover c5, and then you want to continue with c4, c5 check. But the best move is c4 here. Incredible move. And then the idea is that, for example, if you continue, let's say with h4, now c5 is very strong. White's idea is that after king takes c5, now there's rook c1, and you're coming to c8, winning the game. So that's why c4 is so strong. If you try to stop that with king c5, then you can play b4 check, and now this king has to go from this c6 square. Let's say you take on b4, or you play king b4, the winning move is the same, bishop c6. And now you're just going to move the rook, and then this rook is going to fall. So b4, mistake from Kramnik. Now Fabiano continues with h4, and here c4 from Vladimir Kramnik, a3, again both running, c5 check, king e5, and now Kramnik goes for this line, which apparently is completely winning. He goes for rook b8, now only move for black. What's the only move for black here? Yes? Rook takes a7, and now Kramnik goes rook g8. And then when I was analyzing this game, I was thinking, okay, what's gonna win? I mean, what can I do with the black pieces? I'm threatening to take on g5 and then d8. So how do I stop that? Let's see if you guys can find a brilliant solution that Fabiano Caruana spotted in this moment. Rook a1. Rook a1, I'll just take your rook. And then you wanted to go knight c2, right?
Yeah.
Yes, knight c. You can actually, it's illegal. Not even possible. So that was a free rook for me. I love free rooks. So, any ideas? Okay, the move is just completely insane. He went for bishop f6. Great move. And then probably some of you could be saying, come on, how about if I just take the rook? It's a free rook. It's pinned this knight. Then king f5 with a double attack. You're attacking actually the rook, and also you are threatening checkmate now. b2 and c2 are both covered, and here the only available move for white would be rook takes e3, f takes e3, and actually black's winning. This d8 promotion is covered, and then you got this rook a1, you got h2 coming, you're attacking this rook. White would have to resign. So that's why after bishop f6, probably both players would be having a hard attack already by this point. Kramnik went for d8 queen, bishop takes, and rook takes g4. So black's an exchange down only in this position, and then he goes for bishop f6. Now with the same idea, of course. What do you want to do in the next move? If I go c6, for example, with black, if I go c6 with the white pieces, what would you play? King f5, same idea. So that's why here, Kramnik went for rook g6. And now what happens after king f5? I can play bishop d3 check, right? So that's why instead of king f5, Fabiano went for rook b7. Really smart move, attacking this bishop on b7 and then collecting this pawn on b4. So Kramnik was completely winning few moves before, and now after bishop e2, rook takes b4, if I have to take black or white, I would take black because I'm much more active here. The engine says the position is around equal, but in practice this is much easy to play with the black pieces. So king a2 was played. There are many more mistakes to come. Knight c2 by Fabiano Caruana, attacking this rook on e1. So no discovered check. Rook c1 and knight d4, attacking the bishop on e2. Where would you go with the bishop now? Not to f3, that's a blunder. Not to b5, just give me a square. g4, that sounds reasonable. Yeah, g4 is a reasonable move, or bishop d3, as happened in the game, right? So here, rook a4, I mean, now white's threatening to go rook e1, winning the whole bishop, because now you don't have the f5 square, right? So if you play, let's say, h2, then I will go rook e1 check, and after king moves, then rook takes f6, winning the game. So that's why rook a4 was played, king b1, and knight b3 by Fabiano Caruana, attacking the rook on c1 and also including some rook a1 ideas. Rook e1 check was played, king d5, and now you can't really take on f6 because, as we said, there is some rook a1 and rook e1 coming. In the game, Kramnik went for king c2, and now after knight takes d4, Kramnik made an important mistake again. Where would you go with your king now? This is the last trick that Fabiano tried, and it worked out actually. So you have, well, many squares. You can go to c3, to b2. c3 and b2, you can actually say that they are not very good because there is this covered this bishop on f6, right? So you guys have to choose between d2, d1, c1, or b1. d2 is also not very good because of knight f3, right? So yes, b1. So you just lost the game as Kramnik. I mean, it's fine. If Kramnik did that, we can do that, yeah? But b1 was not the best square. Now we're gonna try to explain why. There are so many subtleties here which are very hard to explain. So, king b1, big mistake. The best move was king c1. Now we're going to try to see why. So king c1, the idea is that after knight f3, Actually, you have to maintain this rook on the background, right? Because there are h2, there is h2 coming. So rook d1, and after rook a1, you have bishop b1 check. The problem with king b1 is that after knight f3, there is rook a1 coming, and you're actually winning the game. So where do you go here? You cannot go to f1. If you go to c1, there is rook a1, king c2, rook takes c1, king takes c1, and h2 winning. Because if you go rook h6 to stop that pawn, what do we play here? How do we win? Sorry? Bishop h4, exactly. Just building a bridge between the rook and the pawn. So that's why after knight f3, rook d1, now Kramnik is losing. Rook a1 check, king c2, rook takes e1, and Kramnik realized that after king takes d1, h2 was winning. So that's why he tried some last trick with bishop a6, but this is just a piece down now. Rook d2 and bishop b2 check, king b1, and the position is completely winning for black. King c5, bishop b7. We can even beat Vladimir Kramnik in this position. Would you beat Kramnik in this position with the black pieces? I think you will.
Yeah.
I think you will, yeah. Yeah, we're a piece up. We got 2 pass pawns. Yeah, even Magnus Carlsen will struggle against us in this position. So knight e5, rook f6 and f3, rook f5 and f2, and finally Fabiano Caruana won this game against Vladimir Kramnik. So as you guys saw, this started with a solid Petrov and ended up with a crazy endgame where White was trying to make 4 queens on the queen side, and then Black was trying to make a queen on the king side. So I hope you guys enjoy this crazy endgame, and thank you for coming.